Okay, here's a quick demo in Lightroom um, to add a few edits to your photo to make it a little bit creepier. And we're going to use this photo here. This is a photo by Maria Nita. She has published this photo on unsplash.com, so I want to thank her for letting us use this. This is posted on Classroom, so if you click on the photo, go to the dots, open in new window, then you can download that to your computer. And then I'm going to go to Lightroom and I will import that in. I'm going to just go from my downloads and here's a photo, drag it over. Sorry, let me try that again. I'm going to go to library and drag it over. And it should bring up the folder with that photo. And here it is. You can go ahead and import that in. And then go ahead and click on develop and you can start editing your photo. Now, the first thing you want to do is get a good photo of some subject matter that is creepy in the first place, because obviously you can only do so much by editing the photo. We'll try to do as much as possible, but you know, the subject matter is going to matter here, so you want to try to take care of that and get a good photo with some creepy subject matter. Now, what we're going to do with this one, we're going to just keep it simple. We're going to turn it into black and white, and then we will add a little bit of grain to make it look a little scratchier and older and hopefully a little more mysterious. I'm first going to go here to the side here where it says treatment. We'll go black and white first. Now, when you do go to black and white, you can scroll down to this B&W section, and that's going to give you all of the colors in your photo, and you can adjust and make them lighter or darker. So I'm going to take the green since this is a forest, and I'm going to make that a little darker because that's scarier. And you can kind of play around too with the other colors to see what's in your photo. I think that's probably going to be it. And so I'll go back up to your kind of tone settings, which you should be really familiar with at this point. These 4 sections right here are the ones you want to be aware of. Remember, you have highlights. These are sort of the lighter values. Notice at the top right, it will highlight the section of your values that you want to edit. So highlights are the second lightest group. Shadows is the second darkest, and then you have your whites, which are the lightest values, and then the blacks. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the blacks down a bit. That's going to kind of deepen those darker values. I don't want to lose too much of the texture here, so be careful with the shadows. You can kind of change the balance between those blacks and the shadows, and maybe just kind of enhance the textures that are on the darker side. And same thing with the whites and the highlights. Again, your whites are going to be the lightest values, and your highlights are going to be the second light values, so you can kind of adjust to see what you want. I'm going to try to keep the lighter values, the white values, visible, and maybe the highlights a little darker. And again, you just kind of go with what you think is going to add to the mystery here. You do have exposure and contrast too. These are a little more heavy-handed, so you don't have as much control. But feel free to, again, experiment with what you think is going to work. Same thing, clarity. If you think you want some things punched up, some details, you can kind of play around with that. Now what I want to do is give this a little bit of graininess, and I'm going to do that way down here. This is going to be in a section called effects, and you'll have a section for grain, and right now it's set to 0. It might help also to kind of zoom in, so I'm going to zoom in on a section here, and I'm going to take that up, and you'll see as you kind of increase that, you'll get a little more graininess on that photo. You can also change the size and the roughness of that. So I'm going to take that roughness up a little bit. And you can play around again with the size of that graininess to whatever you think you like. That's pretty creepy right here. Again, there's the photo as a whole, and you can continue to play around with that. There it is in color. Again, we want this to be black and white though, so I think this is a good place to maybe stop. Now, one thing though that you might want to consider too, rather than going straight black and white, I'm going to turn this back to color. You can still definitely have a photo in color that's creepy, so if you think your photo is creepier with color, by all means, use it. What you can also do, something you can consider, is down here in your presence settings, you have a setting for saturation. Remember that that's the amount of color, your intensity of colors. So if I turn that up, it's going to make that really, really intense in terms of those colors that are there. But if I turn it down, I can almost make it black and white and kind of just keep some of that color. And if you keep a little bit and you play around with the temperature, you can sort of get a little bit of a color tone on your photo, maybe sort of like a sepia. If you want a tiny bit of color in your photo. So you can play around with that. Just careful, you don't want to get to too light. But play around with it. Have some fun with this one and see what you can get. So what this photo, we want to export it. I might actually go back to black and white for this. And then I will export this as always. You are going to turn this in, so go ahead and export that image, put it in on the assignment in Classroom.